All right. Oh, welcome to Pacific Beer Chat. Today we're going to talk about IPAs. We've got Carnell from Burrard Inlet. We've got Chelsea from Brutiful BC. Mike from the Beer Raider. Terry from West Coast Beer Geek. And me, Mike from Mike's Craft Beer. So I guess why don't we start? IPAs have been kind of boring in BC for a while now. Nothing has changed, but in the last little bit, things are changing. What's got you excited about IPAs right now?
The way they taste. I've never been a big IPA guy, so and the reasoning was I never sort of grew up drinking super bitter. I shouldn't say grown up because no one grows up drinking beer, ideally. But when I became of legal drinking age, the bitterness thing really got to me, and I felt like for a while there was, I mean, it's the offset thing, but just a bit of a pissing contest in terms of bitterness. With these, new hazy IPAs, I find that there's way more flavor to them, better balance. And I think that's what people are drawn to in them is the flavor. The hop flavor is still there. And the bitterness is more reasonable in terms of, drinking a beer and not just having it burn your tongue off.
Anyone else?
I'll go ahead.
I think for me, it's just finally
I'll add into
new
that
beer.
and just kind of say that I'm excited to see some of the experimentation, but I still think we've got a long ways to go to kind of get a lot of those right. I think the only one that so far has really kind of nailed it for me has been the Steamworks one. Although I did like that Juice Plus from Twin Sails, that was nice. But the other ones still don't quite line up to some of the better ones I've had from the U.S. So I think I'm excited to see that we're going there, but I still think there's a lot of work to do to kind of refine the recipes. And I think in the next 2 or 3 years, we'll see some pretty exciting stuff coming out consistently within our market. I know a lot of people have been really excited about the stuff, but we've been having a lot of conversations about, these are cool, but at the same time, I'm starting to blur the lines between Five Alive and beer. Which don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with that, right? It's okay. But sometimes you feel like Five Alive, and sometimes you feel like beer. So.
Oh, I don't think you just have to choose one for the rest of your life.
But
anyway, that's kind of where I'm at. I'll get into that a little bit more as we go.
I can really feel you on that too. Like I'm having the 2 straws milkshake with mango and pineapple, and I don't know, I'm missing the bitterness. Like it's fruity, it's nice, but it doesn't have any kind of bite to it. I don't know. I like it, but I wouldn't be buying a lot of this. So, yeah.
Yeah, that one, a couple of those style of beers, the sort of aftertaste is a little funny, I find too. Not just picking on that one. There's been a few of them like that just the wheat malt or whatever they're flaked wheat they're using in those things sometimes gives a bit of a cream of wheat flavor at the end. That's a little off-putting, a little different. Anyway, I mean, not to knock the style, right? I've only had a few of those, so sometimes it takes a while to get used to them. But yeah, that was unexpected for that one.
Yeah, to be honest, I've been off IPAs for the better part of 6 months. Not that I haven't drank them, but I just got so bored by them. And then I just with we had the sour summer last summer and a bunch of people doing a lot of different experimental things. I just kind of I didn't say goodbye. I just said see you later IPA, and I started exploring different things and once we started talking about doing this podcast, I started to reintroduce them to myself. And last night I was drinking Sculpin IPA from Ballast Point, which for all intents and purposes is a fantastic IPA, but I did not like it. It was just so boring to me. And like it's everything you'd want in an IPA, it's a great IPA. You check all the rate beer and what have you sites, and it's got fantastic ratings. Everyone has it on top of their list, but I don't know. I'm looking for something more, and hopefully that's coming out soon. But I'm not inspired by any IPAs, and I've kind of been steering away from them. It's because no one's really done anything super impressive apart from the ones here or there. But as a style, it's kind of to quote Billy Madison, it's the puppy that lost its way.
Oh,
Well, it's
man.
still the most popular growing style in North America, that's for sure. But
Yeah,
I get IPA fatigue, like after fresh hop season,
Mhm.
and then my dad brought back a bunch of true Northeastern IPAs, or New England IPAs as they're called. Some Treehouse stuff, some Trillium, some Alchemist, and it was interesting kind of trying those and getting a real flavor for them. But after that, it's kind of like, I need some malt in my life.
Yeah.
I love a good winter, barley wines and all those other so nice any time of the year, but help warm me up during the winter. But getting back to the topic there, I'm drinking the Happiness by Superflux.
Nice.
Close up there. This is actually release 1, so this one's about a month old. And I actually find some of these ones get a little bit better for me after 2 to 4 weeks of refrigeration.
I thought you
think,
were beer.
I find they're almost a little too in your face when they first come out. Some of them are a little pithy, and you kind of get that rindy flavor. I don't know what that comes from, but they can be a bit much. But if you let them sit in the fridge for a couple weeks, they do kind of balance out a little bit better. And I think they're I think someone mentioned that they were, a little bit more balanced. I actually find that they aren't. I find they're very everything's up front, and then there's very little at the end. I think Chelsea, you mentioned the lack of bitterness there. You're it's like your palate's just waiting for it, right? And then it's like nothing.
Was the Happiness IPA not more of a West Coast style still, though?
No, it doesn't have a very bitter finish. It's very more of a fruit forward kind of. It's very citrusy, but
Well, what's
yeah.
Sorry, what's the difference? I mean, so often we just go hazier IPA, but a lot of the hazy IPAs I've had don't seem to fit the style guidelines for what an IPA should be, or at least what a West Coast IPA should be, or people are used to hear for IPAs. That most ones I've had have been pretty low in IBU, and I would think wouldn't even make it into the style guidelines based on that.
Well, I think that's part of what makes that New England or East Coast IPA so interesting, is they're so different than what we're used to here in the West Coast. It's way juicier, way more flavor, more body, but yes, the bitterness is not there to the same amount.
Well, I also find that because they're so hopped up at the end of the boil there, it's so dry hopped that you often don't taste so much of the malt either. So all you're really getting is hop. And I mean, you might get some yeast ester, obviously, but you're getting so much of the hop that you don't actually get that malt flavor. So I always look for that sort of malt forward beginning, real nice juicy hop forward middle, and then I do like a bitter finish. It doesn't have to be like bitter beer face, but I do like at least a little. That's why I like the Steamworks one, because it's everything Eastern IPA or Northeastern IPA is. But then just a touch of West Coast at the very end, just a little bit of bitterness to kind of round out the experience there. It kind of takes your mouth on a roller coaster. So that's always what I look for, and that's what I enjoy the most. But it's still fun trying all these things. I mean, it was nice to try this Superflux one, which is formerly Machine Ales, so they're contract brewing right now, I believe.
Yeah, they're at Dogwood right now.
Yeah, so it's good. I'm glad to see they're still around, and I think given some good time in that area, maybe come out on their own eventually, they'll start kicking out some really high quality stuff. So
I think the problem with them is that they're also a distribution company for beer, so they're really busy with that as well. So sort of
Oh,
a
cool.
side project.
Interesting. Yet they don't distribute.
Well, they can't afford to get their beers into most stores because they're sell out so fast. So I guess what East Coast style or New England style IPAs have people been trying so far? Anything stand out? Carnell, there's probably something you've had.
Yeah, I've had a few. I mean, I'm obviously, I don't know if many people know. Well, I'm connected. I do work with Twin Sails, so I like their beer. But the one I'm drinking right now is actually, I went down to Callister the other day, and hadn't been there in a while since the new breweries came in, and I was really happy to try some of their, some of the Boombox stuff. And whichever one it was at the time, I think it was the Easy Does It. It was great.
That's so good.
Yeah, I'm
stuff
thinking
right
about
here?
what you guys have said in terms of bitterness and balance, and it's making a lot of sense. And I think that was a great example. I was happy to see there was actually 2 Northeast Pale Ales there at the time, or India Pale Ales at the time. The other one was from Lightheart, which I hadn't had any of before. And I'm sipping it right now. It's a nice beer. For me personally, as I was saying, I'm not big on bitterness. I find the bitterness a little heavy on this one, just because the dry hopping seems a little softer to me. But yeah, it's great to try all the new ones. And I think my favorite, and maybe there's a twinge of bias in this, but my favorite so far has been the Space Armadillo from
Oh,
Twin.
Yeah.
And I can't wait till that one comes out again. I know that's planned to come out again. I won't say more than that. But yeah, so those 2, the ones from Boombox and Space Armadillo, do it for me.
Yeah, if only they could actually
Yeah.
keep beer in that tasting room.
Yeah.
Yeah, that space armadillo was like a juxtapose times 2
Mhm.
in terms of the strength. And it develops really nicely too. Like I've got 5 or 6 cans left of batch 1, and it's I like it when Brett kicks around and cleans itself up a little bit. I don't mind sitting on those for 6 months, a year or more, because it just I like the Brett flavor in there, and that one is great. Yeah, that's still their best beer. So I'm excited that it's coming out again.
Yeah, that was a very, very good one.
Although you gotta watch it with that one. I don't know. I've had the triple IPA you guys did with Parallel 49,
Mhm.
which was good. That was nice. It was more balanced than I expected. And I didn't get as tired from that as I did from Space Armadillo. Space Armadillo will knock you out.
Yeah.
How strong was the
Yeah.
Space Armadillo?
8%.
That's funny because the collaboration was 11.
That's right.
I know.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the first time I had the Space Armadillo was at Canning, and I sat, and I just gone in, it was the middle of the day, and I thought I'd just give it a try, and I got halfway through and realized I was hanging out for a while, maybe drinking a coffee afterwards before I got in my car again. I think it's hard. Dillo hits hard.
It does.
Yeah, I think it just comes from the hops more than anything. But
Mhm.
yeah, I remember the first couple of times I've had that one, and I wanted to have another beer, and I'm like, no, I'm good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was actually at Callister today to meet up with someone and tried out the new Juicy AF IPA from Boombox. Or
Hey, Mike, what does AF stand for?
Juicy as Fuck.
There we go.
It was
It has
actually
flutters, man. Flutters.
it was supposed to be the name of their next beer, which is a double IPA, but they tasted it and was like, no, this is Juicy as Fuck. We're renaming this. And it lived up to its name. It was amazing.
Have you noticed that Juicy has replaced dank in the description world? Everything was a play on the word dank for about a year there.
Probably not.
Now
bad.
everything is juicy.
Yeah. It's the new beer buzzword.
Is
Yeah.
juicy
Oh,
not
totally,
more of
yeah.
a word you like to put towards things you want to drink, though?
Juicy?
Dank's a little odd.
You never had that never came by into that hemp soda that was piled up in all the liquidation stores a couple years ago?
No.
Oh yeah, dank. Yeah, I had that. The energy stuff, right?
Yeah,
And then it went out of business for some weird reason, like
probably because it didn't
marketing,
taste very
maybe.
good.
Probably Trump.
Yeah. Thanks, Trump.
Right back at it, huh? Yeah,
Although there still are some pretty quote unquote danky IPAs out there. I find anything with especially a lot of mosaic at the end, you really get that sort of nuance of BC 420. You're like, whoa, what's in this? Yeah, I had a couple of fresh hops that were really like that, especially the Fremont one, the Field to Farm one. That was mosaic. That was probably the quote unquote dankiest beer I've ever had.
Really?
It was just like all through the entire thing. I was like, wow, that's crazy.
I guess since you bring up fresh hop beers, for the last couple of years they've been really boring. But this year they seem the hop crop was a lot better. Does anyone else notice that?
Yeah.
That was,
you
Still
know,
not my
everyone
favorite
looks
style.
at Sartori as the benchmark. But I've kind of moved past that. What I'm actually enjoying about fresh hop is how people are branching out from the IPA and throwing it in different styles, and it's creating some really interesting flavors that, you know, kind of throws you for a loop. Where, you know, like I found I think it was Persephone did one in a red ale, which was pretty killer. But yeah, it's a seasonal thing, right? Like every summer's different, every growing season's different. We're all gonna have different harvests. It's gonna work for different crops, and it's gonna be a different brew every year. But you know, yeah, this year was a winner. The previous 2 years, pretty lame.
Yeah.
yeah, I'm not the biggest Centennial fan.
Yeah.
So I find a lot of the beers, if they just put Centennial in there in a lot of cases, and we grow a lot of Centennial hops in BC, and so a lot of the BC ones are kind of meh for me anyway. I know some people really like them, and you know, Sartori usually uses a boatload of Centennial, and that has never been my favorite.
Yeah.
You know, Yellow Dog uses US Yakima hops, and those are always amazing.
Yeah.
Every one of theirs except one that, what was that stupid hop? A real bad one. they didn't bottle it or can it. It was just in their tasting room. And it was cashmere. They did cashmere, and that was awful. It has a real weird aftertaste. Although Dead Frog did a good cashmere one, surprisingly. That was they had it at the Hog Fest, and that was actually a real good one. So.
Yeah, I'm a real negative. Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, no, you, man. I've been talking too much.
Yeah. No, I get really negative about fresh hops because I went really hard after them the past 2 years, and I found they weren't very good, as a couple of you has mentioned. But this year, I don't know if I just got unlucky, but I felt like it was more the same. I had a couple on cask, and it was off, more or less. And the hops weren't helping, I found. That being said, Yellow Dog, I still thought, just knocked it right out of the park with several of their dry or wet hop beers. That Little Dog Syndrome was just insanely good. But for the most part, I don't go out of my way anymore because I think it's just a crapshoot depending on the harvest. I think you're better off, at least for me, to wait and see where the hype is and see if you can find something that's hyped up rather than just buying whatever you can find in terms of fresh hop. Because
that's totally my strategy as well. Like it's becoming a buzzword and it's a novelty, and everyone hypes up the fresh hop season and
pumpkin.
I had a pumpkin beer last night. It was delightful.
But yeah, I totally skipped the fresh hops this year. I was done last year. I drank a bunch of them, and I was really disappointed. I drank maybe 10 in a row and didn't find anyone that I liked. And I just felt like a lot of them are rushing to get these hops, put them in the beer, make the beer. It's not quality beer though. It's just like, oh, we got the fresh hops. Check this out. I don't know. I'm done with that. Maybe if there's a really, really good one, I'll be happy to try it again. But I just found it to be way overplayed.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, it's going to be that way. You don't know what hops you're getting before they get there. You can't do a pilot brews. You're basically most times chucking into an existing recipe. And most of the brewers, like you say, are rushing to get it in. They're trying to get it, from hop buying to beer within 24 hours or something stupid. There's going to be mistakes, and I don't know. I think it's more of a crapshoot than it is going to the liquor store and buying your favorite beer, and it's cheaper to buy your favorite beer than it is to take a chance on something. So
I was actually going to ask Chelsea, do any of the breweries up in the Okanagan make fresh hop beers? I haven't noticed.
Yep. A lot of them did them more as like casks,
okay.
or like sort of one-off experimental beers. But I think Firehall for sure did one. I'm pretty sure Cannery did one. And Cannery actually, I think, did one with hops grown at Square One Hop Growers, which is the new hop yard out in Naramata.
Oh, nice.
So for sure, like they're doing them. They're just not often making it to shelf, right? They're little projects that go on and sell out in a couple days, and if you're lucky, you get them.
Probably smart of them.
Yeah.
That Tin Whistle Harvest Honey Ale is actually pretty good. I like that one.
Mm-hmm.
That's, you don't see it very much here. Not a lot of their beers. That beer doesn't get down here very much, but that's actually, I mean, the fresh hops are pretty subtle in that by the time it gets here, but you do notice a difference in that one. Honestly, though, I hate to say this about BC, but your best bet is just go across the border down to Washington. you're getting fresh Yakima hops there, and they just have the experience right now. I know our area is really starting to grow and learn what hops we can grow well and which ones are just horrible. But you're going to get better quality hops from Yakima. The Sartori ones are okay. They can be hit and miss. What I am excited about, though, is they're starting to grow more crops. So it takes a couple of years to kind of nail down what's going to grow here, and what's going to taste good at the end of the day. So I am excited to see, because there was a lot more Citra. There was Cascade. So there's a lot more Cascade, which was nice, and a few other hop varieties that are grown at Sartori in other places, but haven't been grown as much. So you're starting to see those come on more. So I am a little bit more excited on future years and seeing what those places can do, because I'm not a huge Centennial fan, and I find a lot of people just dump Centennial in there and say that's their beer. And I'd actually rather them amp up an existing recipe with it. A lot of the famous fresh hop beers from like Deschutes and Sierra Nevada and other places, they put regular hops in there too, pelleted hops in there as well, and then they add the fresh hops to kind of top it off.
Yeah.
And those, that you're kind of you are masking a little bit of the fresh hop, but the beer that comes out of it is usually pretty fantastic.
I find that's where fresh hop is most successful, is when it's less of the showcase and more of kind of building upon an existing recipe, just as you said, Terry. That's generally where you see more good brews, because if you're just using fresh hop as your main hop or your main variety of hops, it's a total crapshoot.
Yeah. The last one I made, I just took an existing recipe, made it, and then I had some fresh hops that were going in my dad's backyard. I just dumped them in there. I was like, oh, here we go. You're going in at 10 minutes at the end of the boil there, and we're going to see what happens.
Nice.
And it was really good. I was surprised, because it was a total rush brew with probably not the freshest malt and the freshest hops, but the base hops, but the fresh hop kind of took over there. So I look forward to what's coming in the future, but the past couple of years have been pretty hit and miss with a lot of them.
I keep talking.
Still, I mean, if it's a single hop, sorry.
Nice.
You can still look at it as, okay, you're still going to understand the hop really well in the beer, right? So there's that piece. If you want to palate train and so on and so forth, that's kind of cool. But most people aren't looking to do that, right? They just want a good beer.
Yeah. Well, you can always dry and wet hop with the same hop style. I keep talking to the brewers here about doing exactly that, and they look at me like I'm saying something crazy or being sacrilegious or something. Like, no, you can't put in dry hops.
Sure you can.
Yeah, exactly. Why not?
Talk to the shoots.
Talk to
Their
me.
their main beers both have pellet hops in them, or no, they do whole cone, but you know they have dried killed hops in them. So
Well, I guess why don't we talk about one of the new styles that seems to be blowing up right now in BC, the Milkshake IPA. Who wants to kind of explain what the hell that is for people that don't know?
You brought it up, Mike. Why don't you tell
no,
us?
come on.
yeah, Mike, I gotta step away for a sec. Be right back.
I've heard it called the most expensive beer to make ever at all, because there's so many. Well, I shouldn't say there's so many. There's adjuncts. There's lots of hops. And there's things like lactose sugar being put in. So you've got lactose. Often you've got fruit extract or fruit itself, which doesn't come cheap, especially when you're doing industrial or full large batches. And you've got a ton of hops. So it's all those things put together, and it comes to make a fairly sweet beer. Someone might kill me if you're saying this, but I think it sounds or tastes what like a really good tasting beer cooler might taste like. But like, I don't know how else to explain it. It's something else for sure.
Almost like alcoholic fruit juice.
Yeah, which like again, you don't usually want to say in front of a crowd of beer drinkers, but it's alcoholic fruit juice that tastes good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
don't know.
know.
What was it? The Juice Plus one? Or no, two straws. I felt it was like the pina colada.
Yeah.
Like this is not far off from a pina colada. Again, no, it's not a bad thing. It's just you kind of have to be in the mood for that, right?
It's totally different. I struggle to explain to people what a milkshake beer tastes like before drinking it. It's nearly impossible. It's something you have to experience.
Well, you're using that buzzword again. It's super juicy, super fruity, usually tropical, and it's got the sweetness from the lactose. And sometimes
it's also it's a softer. I was reading about it. They're using minerals in the water to give it a softer mouthfeel as well, right? So that's maybe something that's part of it that's hard for me to get around too. Is it's kind of thick, it's kind of fruity. It really does feel like somebody poured like some syrup into my beer. I don't know. I'm drinking this one right now. It's a nice beer, but I'm kind of like, oh man, I wish I opened up the Steamworks in my fridge. So
you can still do that.
Do you guys know why it's called a Milkshake IPA? Did you hear about that?
I
remember reading it, but I also remember forgetting it.
There was a collaboration between two breweries. I know that much.
Apparently, Tired Hands was doing some of the juicier Northeastern and New England style IPAs. And then I was reading an article and it said the Beer Advocate founder, Jason, did a really shitty review of Tired Hands and called it a mess and said nobody wants to drink a milkshake beer and really insulted the brewery. So Tired Hands was like, well, we're going to make a whole bunch of milkshake beers. And I think they made over 20 on that theme and trying to really take it and push it further and further. And people kind of picked it up at other breweries. And yeah, that's where it came from, apparently.
I think they also did a collaboration with, what the heck's the name? Omnipolo or whatever?
Yeah.
And that was where it really took off, I think. I actually went to Steamworks today because I heard that they released a new Milkshake IPA. It was the Nitro Mango Milkshakes IPA. I don't know if this will work, but I'll try to show the picture.
Tell me that doesn't sound like a beer cocktail at all.
Look at how foamy that is. And then it did finally where am I? Started to settle out and go orange there, but it was quite something. It was really, really tasty. But
you know what I'm looking forward to? I'm looking forward to the day that it's acceptable again to put a piece of fruit on the glass of your beer. For the longest time it was a no, but it's just around the corner.
Oh no!
You put a piece of pineapple and mango on that or whatever, and I guarantee you it's coming.
That's only okay for
You know what, like-
hepatitis.
But why not? Like, I think maybe the nice thing is IPAs don't have to be the Pacific Northwest IPA that's a face full of hops and nobody wants to drink it. You know, like my little sister's like, oh, save me a can of that Milkshake IPA. She doesn't like IPAs at all, right? Beer maybe could come with a side of fruit. Doesn't have to, but is it wrong? Like, if more people want to drink beer and more breweries open up and there's more styles of beer, is it? I mean, I like options.
Yeah.
It's a good strategy for breweries who are trying to break past that. You know, I don't like bitterness in IPAs. So there's a good chunk of people out there that say that, right? So, I mean, marketing wise, I would they should go nuts. I'd be making them all the time, right?
Yeah.
You know, just get.
Well, and I think what's really good about it, especially having worked in tasting rooms the past year, won't go into that. But people like IPAs either have a great name or a shitty name. Like people love them or hate them, and you have to explain to them there's a whole variation, and it's what you need is these extremes to completely break that mold, to basically destroy that perception of what an IPA is, what an IPA should be, what you think an IPA is, and you know, I'm gonna go as far to say IPAs are a fad. It's going to go away. But what's gonna? I just saw your reaction, Colonel. That was awesome. But what's gonna come out of it is this notion that an IPA can be anything, and so people that didn't like IPAs because they see them as these hoppy, face-melting, bitter drinks will now have a more open mind because they saw this other thing called an IPA that was nothing like that. So that's what I see coming out of it. And now you have this basically blank slate. So when you're a brewery with an IPA on your menu, no one really knows exactly what to expect from that. And it's better for the market that way.
I think it's interesting that you say that, but I mean, like, if we look, I mean, historically, if we want to look historically, and I do, you know, back in the day, 400 years ago, beer was the beer that you could produce in your region. You know, you produced a Hefeweizen or a Pilsner or a Pale Ale because that was what you had available to you. And if someone came from a different part of the country or a different part of the world and told you that your beer was all wrong, you get pretty upset. You'd say, no, this is how beer is done. You're doing it wrong. And I mean, then you come into the 20th century and we basically just had crappy, at least in this part of the world, just crappy lagers for the longest time. And, you know, people were hating on and upset when they first tried their first real pale ale again, or their first, the first IPAs. I think it's just more of that. It's just pushing out from the center further and further. And it may be a fad. It's totally possible. I mean, like ice beer was a thing once. But
only for macros.
I love The Simpsons. Anyways, yeah. So I mean, yeah, it could easily be a fad, but at the end of the day, it's just more of the same. It's just progression away from or new understanding of what beer can be. The same with any product, really.
I think it's hard to say it is a fad because it's been the best-selling craft beer for a very long time. But I think there's been some fatigue because there's not been a lot of change.
Mm-hmm. And Mike, you and I have had this conversation. I think we were having this conversation last year about how bored we were with the IPAs on the market. They'd come a long way in a couple of years, but then they just sort of, you know, everybody was doing the same thing about a year ago. Nothing was coming out that was interesting. And I think that's reflected in what we've been saying during this podcast is everyone's getting kind of bored of IPAs. So maybe, you know, maybe these are a fad, but at least things are, you know, people are trying new things again.
Yeah. Well, I think it used to be that breweries would make a couple different IPAs at least, and then it was just every brewer was making one IPA, never changing. It was just the standard beer. And then breweries stopped making IPAs. Like there was new breweries opening up that, we're not going to make one. And it kind of showed that there was some fatigue.
Mm-hmm.
But now that breweries that weren't going to make an IPA are now making all kinds of IPAs, and selling out all their beer, it's obvious that if you make something different, a different product, and change things up, people will get excited again.
Mhm.
Yeah, I earlier today to prepare for this podcast, I I had a chat with Tom Orange from Fuggles and Warlock just to get a sense on the business side, because I have this feeling that IPAs are, the traditional West Coast IPA is, and he actually completely shut that down. He said for whatever year, their IPA is a killer on the sales. Apart from their strawberry, but that's a beast of its own.
Yeah.
And now there's the shift to the East Coast. The hazier, maltier IPA, but on a sales front, there's been no slowdown on the IPA, which I found surprising. But he's the guy running sales. He's the guy with the numbers. So.
Although I wouldn't
Yeah, well,
say
there's been a
that's...
lot of talk about the hazy IPAs not having a very good shelf life too.
Yeah.
So, like in terms of distribution of beer, you got to kind of be careful with that. I mean, I've kept a couple of the first batch of Steamworks. I'm going to try them at kind of the 6-month and 12-month time frame just to see how they do, and or maybe 3 and 6 would probably be a better test for that one, just to see how they do. But most of the New England ones are like they literally can them and sell them in that second.
Yeah.
Like they're canning while the lineup is outside the brewery.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You literally see them canning your beer. It's kind of crazy, right? So people line up for hours and on a Saturday morning, and they go get their allocations and buy it by the case load or 2 cases per person, and they're canning it right in front of you. So what you're seeing in New England especially is and there's a lot of trade fodder that comes out of that. People trade those beers everywhere. What you're seeing there is a lot of people drinking this beer fresh, and it never really makes it out to distribution, although Trillium does distribute a little bit. And as those breweries grow, you will start to see a little bit more distribution there. Stone did a sort of an unfiltered enjoy buy, but again, they have like a 6 or 8 week time frame on that one. And there have been a few others that have come out here and there, but I think that's a challenge for breweries. You're never going to, with that, if you can't quite figure out the shelf life, you're going to have a tough time making a lot of those beers, because you're going to have to make them in smaller batches and just make them more frequently to really distribute them properly. And we all know that most liquor stores, not all of them, some are good, but most are terrible with dates. and in all fairness too, the reps that are out there selling these things aren't very good at picking up on that either.
Yeah.
So that's the big challenge with that style of beer, is the shelf life is really suspect, and a lot of places don't refrigerate well, and if you leave those out on a shelf for 6 weeks or 2 months, it's probably not gonna taste very good.
Nope.
Whereas beers like Fat Tug and that, I mean, it's proven to have a pretty good shelf life. Even on a warm shelf, it's still pretty good after 2 months. So it's that's where that West Coast sort of preservative part of the bitterness and the hops kind of comes into play, whereas that doesn't quite work the same with some of those newer style IPAs that come out there. So I think we'll see a lot of sort of local offerings. It's going to be a challenge from a sort of a national perspective, though, to see them distributed very much further.
Yeah, it's really.
Go ahead, Colonel.
No, it's a really interesting thought. As you say, these beers, what's the shelf life on them? And I can't wait to hear how it goes on some of the ones that you've stockpiled, because you got to drink them quick. And it's sort of, even though they're driving the beer geek market at the moment, people willing to line up at doors and things like that. I was having a conversation with another brewer on Brewers Row, and they were talking about how their concern was it wasn't sustainable, because you can't brew too much of it lest it go bad. You want to keep up the demand, so people are drinking it quick. And he was speaking to the need for just a strong core lineup too, if you were going to do this. And it was something I hadn't really considered up until that point because, when people sell out of beer, and you see it at Superflux now, and I mean the Steamworks flagship was really hard to get in the beginning. It's a good point. It doesn't really scale, and if you can scale it, it sort of loses a bit of its cachet amongst beer drinkers too. So it'll be interesting to see. Maybe it's an unsustainable beer fad.
I don't know about that. What about places like Brassneck doing it, where it's more of a tap only or very small canned options?
Well, that's the model that it would work on. But the problem is when you get breweries with larger tanks, and you can only brew a smaller batch of it. You're taking a tank, I don't know, say it's a 40 hec tank, and you can only brew 15, 20 hecs of it, and it takes the same amount to ferment, amount of time to ferment and process. You're brewing at half capacity.
Yeah.
Where if you put one of your regular beer in,
you are saving a lot of bright tank time though.
Yeah. Well,
but no, it's a good point though, right? Time is money in those places, right? And if you're only brewing half batch.
Yeah.
Breweries could also
That's
get
probably
into
why
like horizontal
probably why
tanks.
Trillium goes for $20 a 4-pack in the States there in Massachusetts.
That's crazy.
Actually, we should talk about that price. That's been a bit of a beef of mine.
Yeah.
This can here was $4 or $5.
And it's a small can.
I know they're selling it for a little cheaper now, but that's a 12-ounce can of beer.
Yeah. Well, part of the difficulty there is that they're contract brewing, so to make any money, it's going to be more expensive.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, and the thing is, like, I'm fine to buy a 4-pack and try it, but as far as like, am I going to go back and buy more and more and more? unless this thing blows me away, I can do a lot better. I do a lot better for a lot less.
It can't be your go-to beer at that point.
Yeah.
It can't be the one you pick up when it's tough Friday and you just want to go home and drink a beer. It's not going to be that one.
Yeah. Now I will say the Twin Sails stuff and a few of the other Yellow Dog had a hazy.
High five.
There's been a few other that were canned out there. They're at least in a 16-ounce can.
Yeah.
You get a little bit more. You're almost at the price of a growler fill there, right? Like you got to fill a 2-liter growler, you're looking at $12 to $14 usually. If a 4-pack of those 6 cans costs you $16, well, yeah, it's pretty close, right? Pretty close to the same value. So that's better, but it's definitely a lot more than some people are used to paying for beer.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
I buy $50 bottles of beer. But I know there's a lot more that went into those than making a hazy IPA, right? So.
Yeah, no, I picked up a 4-pack of the Melvin 2x4 because I heard people raving about it since summertime, and I finally found some, and it was $20 for a 4-pack of 12-ounce cans. And yeah, I mean, something we've just talked about. I don't know if it'd be. I drank out of the can, so I'm not even sure if it was hazy. But regardless, I was so excited. I just picked it up, paid for it, realized I spent $5 a piece on a can, and then found out it was 3 months old, and it was pretty bad. So, I mean, that
beer is awesome when it's fresher.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
so good.
But I mean, that's the worst case scenario with this sort of thing, and if that happens to too many people who are just looking to try something new, they're probably not going to pick something up like that again.
Was that in a fridge or on a shelf?
It was in a fridge, but it was like 3 months old.
Yeah.
I was too excited to double check. I did ask the guy.
I've had it at 2 months. I've had it at 2 months, and it was good.
Yeah.
Now, the 2x4 beer there, did you see the internet commercial today that was up from Melvin? About 2x4 day at some former wrestler? It was ridiculous.
Yeah, that was pretty funny.
Missed it.
Do you remember who that wrestler was?
Yeah, actually, it's a good thing you brought up Melvin, though, because they're they're kind of taking the West Coast IPA and just adding a little bit of that, little bit more fruit and juice in there. I find in their IPAs, but they still have a pretty bitter finish. And they're kind of the new big thing in the West, the Western brewer. But you know, they lots of stuff in Washington, and their beers are absolutely fantastic. Like they've and they're expensive in the U.S. too. Like I think it's 16 US or 4-pack. And again, you're in the small cans, but yeah, their beers are absolutely delicious.
Yeah, I haven't tried them yet, but I've been looking at the cans in the store.
Well, they're the same cans that first came up here, man.
Yeah. Look closely.
Yeah, you got to go down to Elizabeth Station in Bellingham.
Yeah, you want to go down for me?
Sure.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. It's but you know what I mean. At the same time, I think we're sort of seeing beer drinkers become wine drinkers, in that you compare the price of beer to wine. You know, a $20 couple bottles of beer at $10 a piece or $14 a piece relative to a bottle of wine at that same price. You're doing extremely well in terms of quality, and I think people are beginning to realize that to some degree. That if you're into that quality food or drink or whatever, beer is a incredibly what's the word I'm looking for? Economical way to go. And more than that, you know, the ABV is rising. So
Yes, it is.
on all these beers. So if you're drinking a couple of hazy IPAs at 8% a piece, and you know that 4-pack costs you 20, even $25, it's the same as a nice glass of wine, and the quality is probably way better than the equivalently priced wine. But I still can't convince myself of that anytime I go into a bottle shop for whatever reason. Probably because I don't drink wine, but
Yeah, probably.
yeah.
Yeah, although I've been having some good conversations with folks about once those bottles get into the $30, $40, $50 range, and they're aged in bourbon barrels, and that's exciting. You can buy bourbon, really good bourbon, for a lot less than that.
Yeah.
Which was also aged in bourbon barrels.
Get out.
Bourbon.
Yeah.
They gotta advertise that better.
Anyway,
My mind is blown.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I
I
guess,
thought bourbon
Anyway,
barrels were meant for aging beer. Like
what else would you use it for?
that's weird.
Actually, I wanted to touch back on what Mike mentioned there about Fuggles and Warlock and their sales of IPAs. I think part of the reason why they haven't had issues is because they've got so many different IPAs on the go all the time. It's not just one IPA. Whereas a lot of breweries, it's just
and I know this because I used to work for them. But they they have their Destiny IPA, and that is it's a good IPA. Like when you think IPA, you think Destiny. Well, that flavor profile.
Yeah.
And they brewed it that way. They brewed it to be very acceptable, very middle ground IPA, very sessionable. Funny thing though, since it's 6%, it's too high to actually be in ABV to be entered into competitions under the BCBJ. I think I got that right. They can't actually win
BJCP
awards.
Yeah.
What?
Because it's too high in ABV, but I think that is a fantastic standard. But then they're always doing their experimental series and their ride-in. They do a lot of, around this time of year, they do a lot with rye and IPAs, which I'm a huge fan of. In fact, found this buddy today.
Nice.
Yep.
Always does some great stuff.
But yeah, they're always going to be turning out IPAs and experimenting with it. I think that's one thing. Even though they fired me, no, it's one thing that it was a mutual breakup. Let's go with that.
They always say that.
No, it's one thing that Fuggles does well is they do good stuff. They experiment with beer and they kind of try and break the mold of what beer should be and what IPA should be. And if you know Fuggles or Dan Fuggles, he's like a crazy scientist. Like, he brews most of the time between his experimental time between 2 a.m. and 5 a.m. I don't know when that guy sleeps, but like he's out there. I closed up shop a bunch of times and turned down the lights, and you hear in the back, he's like, "Hey!" I'm like, "Oh, poor Dan." He's experimenting, but that's what's needed in the industry. Absolutely.
Yeah, their Super 8-bit is one of my favorites.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's a great
West
one.
Coast style, and that's a delightful.
That's an amazing IPA.
And that got so good when they opened up that new brewery.
Yeah.
It was good before, and then I was like, "Oh, this is new equipment." And,
Yeah.
that
Well,
was,
once they actually had control of their own processes and their own systems, and they could dial everything in. They have Newland's system in there versus wherever they were brewing at the time before. I found, on average, the quality of their beer, it was a little higher, and it's just that consistency and your control of your systems and all the rest. But yeah, as you said, 8-bit. When I was working that tasting room and doing the marketing there, people just couldn't have enough great things to say about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Boom.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess as far as other things, we still see a lot of bread IPAs out there. Those are pretty hit and miss.
I find more miss than hit.
Yeah, like I said, I like the Twin Sails. Obviously, Juxtaposed is a fan favorite, and that's one of my favorite beers. A lot of people like the Driftwood Raised by Wolves.
Yeah.
Not my favorite.
I really liked it when I first had it, when it was first released. I haven't had it since, but the first batch I really liked.
Yeah, the Trading Post one is not bad. We won't get into that one. Trading Post there, but they're doing some neat things out that way too.
Hey,
Yeah.
Speaking of breweries that fired me,
Oh, he's
2016 was a bad year for me.
Get rid of book, man.
Need a beer, Mike?
But,
I wasn't a good fit in the team that I hired. So you do the math.
Almost choked on my beer.
oh dear. I'm just gonna take a sip from my empty glass here.
Rookie. I've got refills.
Oh, nice.
But it's interesting when you talk about sort of local IPAs. I've noticed that. I mean, this just might be me, but I have a feeling that Steamworks flagship is kind of kicking tug out of a few tap lines there, or maybe moving them down the
Move to
recipe
Victoria.
list a little bit there.
Without a doubt. I mean,
You know?
that beer is, I think you mentioned it, or someone mentioned it earlier, in that it still has a little bit of a West Coast finish. Like, in terms of hazy beers, I think that's like the gateway to hazy beer. It's just a great beer. Yeah, and I see it taking I can imagine it taking a bunch of lines. I hope it does, because I'm a little bit sick of Fat Tug, but that's just me.
Well, I went
anything-
to. Go ahead. Sorry. Yeah.
Go, Chelsea.
I was just gonna say, if anything comes out of this new Northeast milkshake trend, which might be short-lived or not, I want to see more of that crossover between West Coast and East Coast, like something with some edge to it, but with that juiciness, the new techniques that you're using to brew, but with sort of what we already see. I want to see it kind of open up and expand a little bit more into what we're kind of getting tired of, right?
Totally.
We were just getting tired of the same old. We need
Yeah.
change.
Yeah. I'm tired of going to Washington to buy my IPAs. I want to be able to buy them here.
Yeah.
and
Go
not
before the tariff.
not pay $22 a six-pack for those U.S. ones either. That's
Well,
I mean, I'm still paying that right now for the Canadian ones, but
I'm a huge
Can
hophead.
I
I hadn't
just
bought the
stop for a
IPAs in a long
second?
time.
Was Parnell playing with the lint roller? Is that what we just saw?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, continue.
Is that another thing we do on this?
You do.
I keep mine off camera, man.
Oh. Didn't know there were so many rules.
We
That's
talked
what she said.
a lot about creativity. We talked a lot about sort of amalgamating all the different styles. What do you think's next for IPAs in the next couple of years around here?
Hard to say. I think it is going to be that we had the pendulum swing towards super hoppy, melt your face West Coast IPAs. Now the pendulum's swinging towards the East Coast. I see it landing somewhere in the middle where you get, the juicy, the more malty focused IPAs mixed with the West Coast hops. I think it's going to be a very interesting next couple of years because now the gates have been opened for any focus on an IPA as long as it's good.
Yeah.
Which is a stupid way of saying it, but I just think that the market's spoken. They're tired of the West Coast IPA. You've hopped them out. They want their malts there too. They want more than just hops. So we're gonna see amalgamation.
I would almost like to see the pendulum swing to almost like the Elysian model where breweries had 2, 3, 4, 5 different IPAs. So there was always things happening, things changing. You could have an East Coast IPA, you can have a West Coast IPA, or you can have blends of them, double IPAs, triple IPAs, but always changing. Not just being Fat Tug, Central City, or Red Racer IPA, or this IPA, or none. Just always things that are different because we're fickle. We don't want the same beer all the time.
Yeah, I really like the idea of kind of taking almost like a base recipe and building on it too. I think that's that's practical for a brewery, right? You're not changing too much, but maybe you're changing up the hop profile. Maybe you're adding some different specialty malts, and their rye is a great. You see a lot of them doing. I really like the idea of everyone kind of has their seasonal IPA for every season of beer, whatever 5 there are or 4, or I think there's like 5, isn't there?
Season?
But anyway, so I'd like to see.
I'm pretty sure there's 4 seasons.
No, we have 2, rain and sun.
Yeah.
Beer seasons, on the other hand, though, there's more, right?
Yeah.
So. Yeah. But anyway, I'd like to see more of that for sure. I actually, my prediction is we'll start seeing Northeast Session IPA.
That'd be good.
And I actually think that's a good thing because I think you can get those flavors. You don't get a lot of malts in these beers to begin with, so you're not losing much when you dial down the malt bill.
Mm-hmm.
You can still get that, that fruit forward flavor in there without too much alcohol. And I think if they thin out a little bit, which I find a lot of sessions do, I don't think it's actually going to hurt it, especially if you kind of go the milkshake style where you're there to kind of keep some body there. So I expect we'll see that. I think drinking them now, I'm thinking, I'm not really the beer. I'm not absolutely dying for it or loving it. But hot summer day, I wouldn't mind an afternoon, sipper kind of beer like, an afternoon slosher kind of beer like that, right? That would probably go pretty nice with a deck and some sunshine.
Yeah, for sure.
So I think we'll see that in the future. I think those a little bit more in that lower alcohol style beers, and I think that's a good thing. I'd be happy to see that.
We could use some more high
A
alcohol.
little less
IPAs.
actually putting fruit, a little less putting actual fruit in the beer, and a little bit more using the hops. Which is nice.
Yeah, I see it going in 2 ways because I think the American market is so much different than the British Columbian market or the Canadian market at this point. I think they're a good 10, 15, maybe even 20 years ahead. And craft brewers, down there are actually big breweries. Anyways, I see them definitely going towards a more session style, but up here, I think there's we're just scratching the surface relative to what's happening down the States. I think one of the big things that's going to keep it pushing, in every direction is lupulin powder, which I don't totally understand, but I'm willing to come out with a theory, and that's the lupulin powder, from my understanding, pulls some of the the help me out here, guys. Hop acid, is that a thing?
Yeah.
Alpha
acids?
Alpha acids. Thank you. Yeah, pulls off some of the alpha acids and lets that recirculate further through the beer. So it's basically, opening up a whole nother avenue in terms of recipe creation to brewers. And as far as I know, there's only one. I only know of one brewery using it at the moment. And
I know of two.
Two? Okay, so
Pretty sure
yeah, but I mean, we
Boombox
have.
is using it.
3.
What's that?
Nothing.
But we got 120 brewers in BC, and we've got 2, maybe 3 brewers using it. I think that's a huge sort of avenue to go down. That's a whole nother area to tweak and mess around with. So I don't see it stopping anytime soon. I think we'll definitely get to session hazy beers, but as with most things, I think we'll be 5 to 10 years behind the States in that regard.
Why don't we start with 10% first then?
10%, yeah, okay, deal. As if I have power over these things.
Well, you got Space Armadillo and how about that coming out and stuff. So
You're giving me a lot of credit I don't deserve here, Mike.
no.
Take it.
You're wearing the sweater.
Yeah. It was just a cold evening.
I'm wearing my IPA shirt, so
That's a great shirt.
I can't get high enough with my headphones. IPA a lot when I drink.
That's funnier than it should be.
True.
Someone should name their beer that.
They should. I'm sure it's coming. Dan, are you listening? Oh man. I guess
What's the Asian symbol for that? What's the Chinese symbol for IP a lot? I could just see that on a Puggles beer.
that's just the sour series though.
Whatever.
You don't know. Some of their sours, it just has a symbol on there, and we're ignorant white people, so.
It can mean anything.
True. Well, I know that they don't say the same thing as the name of the beer. I know that much.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah, no, they're not the same thing.
Could you imagine, like, if people in China who are opening up craft breweries, they're just like, L looks cool, let's chuck that on the bottle.
Have you not seen some of the shirts that go around in China?
I know. Are we still doing the podcast? Or?
Yes.
Oh, okay. All right.
I can edit it again.
I'll wait till the end.
Well, I think we're getting pretty close to the end, I think, anyways. Why don't we kind of just go through, start with Carnell, just what was the beer you're drinking and what do you like or what's interesting about it, quickly?
Yeah, I'm drinking, I'll try and bring it up for the camera here. So this is from Callister, and by Callister I mean Lightheart. Lightheart is one of the co-brewers at Callister. I didn't know they were doing the hazy stuff, but I came by this one. It's called the Brain Grenade. It's got a really nice smell and nose. Unfortunately, I find it a little bitter on the back end, but it's definitely a beer I would recommend to people who are looking for that bitterness in IPA, who find that really satisfying. I was chatting to my girlfriend, and that's what she said she likes in an IPA is even she likes the hazy stuff, but she wants to have that bitter back end like a lot of you guys were talking about. So I think it's something more for her and people who enjoy that rather than me, but still a beer I would never turn my nose up at.
Nice. How about you, Chelsea?
I'm having the 2 straws. I don't know if you can see that. No, not really. Anyways, it's from Twin Sails. It's my first Milkshake IPA. I'm not sold on it. I don't hate it. I think it's interesting. Would I buy it again? I don't know. Maybe different flavors. I'd like to see that be played around a little bit. The thickness of it, like my glass, there's so much crap in the bottom of that. I don't want to finish it. So I don't know, I'm kind of on the edge. I like the experimentation. I like how they're using new techniques. Something we didn't really talk about was, I was looking up homebrewing recipes for this, and they're dry hopping in the primary fermentation, which they're saying is suspending sort of the aroma particles and oils with the yeast in the beer. So new techniques are exciting, but I want to see it in a different beer, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So I like it. I think it's a good idea. I want to see where it's going to wind up. I'm not thinking where we're at right now is where it's going to be really popular for a while. So
Yeah. What about you, Mike?
Oh, me.
Yeah,
The
you.
other Mike. What I got. I was in the liquor store today, and I hadn't visited the Zephyrus series from Four Winds for a while. Zephyrus being the Greek god of good beer. And I love rye in my IPAs. And I'm like, hey, you gonna drink it? So I did. And
Stream of
it's-
consciousness.
I still love it. It's a good rye IPA. I'm very partial to rye in beer. It just suits my palate really well. It's got that nice spiciness that rye brings out in beer. IPAs, it just really works well with. Dones does some stuff with it too, which is awesome.
Yeah, they do some good stuff.
Conversation for another time. But yeah, still a good beer if you hadn't had it for a while.
Terry?
Yeah, as shown earlier, Happiness by Superflux Beer Company. They just released this again, so this is back out on the market if you can find it. I usually get mine from Pacific Liquor Store in Fleetwood.
Yeah, that's where I got mine from
They
too.
generally carry it in their stores. Usually, Superflux will go to like Bury Creek. They'll sell it at Dogwood for like an hour. Very, very strange beer selling strategy, but it works for them, I guess.
Well, they sell
They
out
must
an
be
hour,
brewing
that's
this.
why.
Well, they must be brewing this in really, really small batches because there's no way they're using the full tanks at Dogwood there. If they are, I'd be shocked. But anyway, yeah, no. As far as beer goes, I felt the same when I drank this at first. I felt the body was just a touch thin for what I was hoping for, but it didn't take away from the beer too much. Kind of a 3.5 out of 5 for me. Very citrus forward, kind of going for that Blossom Sip of Sunshine kind of style of beer. They're not quite getting there. So again, as I mentioned with them, and this is their first release from that brewery, from where they're brewing now. I would never expect this to be their best beer. And I think over time, with iterations and more experience on that system and going, I think it's just going to get better and better. And the fact that they released it again means that they're likely going to make more of it over time. So I look forward to that, and I look forward to retrying it in about 6 months.
Perfect. And I'm drinking another one from Callister actually, but from Boombox Brewing. Let's see if I can get this in here. It's the Easy Does It IPA, and it's a sort of a Northeast or New England IPA. It's really tropical, really lots of pineapple and mango, lots of little bit of citrus rind. Not a lot of malts, but lots of bitterness. It's quite tasty.
And it's named after a rap song, Mike.
Son of a bitch.
I know how much you love your rap.
Oh yes, I love it. Actually, I just
That's
thought of
old
one more
school.
thing that I'd like to bring up. Another beer that Twin Sails thought up that's totally off the wall for most IPAs is their new Hot Take Zero IBU IPA. How many people have tried that yet? Am I the only
Mike,
one?
how many of those faders have you had there, buddy?
Don't worry about it. Having a good time. We're having a good time here.
Has anyone else tried this
That's a
one yet?
standard 7.2%. Don't worry about it.
Carnell, have you had this one yet?
Which one?
The
Hot take? Yes, I have had the hot take.
What is your thoughts without getting yourself?
It is the most argumentative beer in the world, I'm aware of.
Yeah.
In that it starts so many arguments, and it's not an IPA.
It's got more hops than most IPAs probably do.
That's the thing, right? We get into this, like, stylistically, it's not an IPA, nor are many. I was actually just browsing the BJCP rules. Nor are many East Coast IPAs or Northeast IPAs. But you know, it's a spiritual IPA in that it uses more hops than a lot of IPAs. Yeah, I like it. Just like a lot of beer styles out there, like a big stout or something like that. It's not something I sit and I session or I bring a. I would bring a 4-pack to a party, but I would probably drink one and let other people drink the rest. Sort of like I would do with the milkshake too, right? It's the sharing beer, I think. Similar to, you know, a big imperial stout, that idea, right? You're tasting it for the flavor, absolutely. And yeah, it's again, I've got some sitting in my fridge right now. I'll drink it or I'll save it for when someone comes over because I think it's just a cool experience at the same time. And I can't wait to see where sort of that style goes too. Like we were talking about the milkshake, you know, this is sort of the beginning, not the end of these styles of beer, hopefully. And hopefully they get to a you know, with anything, it gets better. Like
yeah. I was just interested because I'd never heard of a 0 IBU IPA with having a ton of hops. And I guess it's some kind of chemical reaction that when you add hops early in the boil, there's a chemical reaction that causes the bitterness. If you add it right at the end, it doesn't have that chemical reaction and the bitterness isn't created. So instead of having that bitterness, it has all the fruit flavors and the floral notes and all that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a degree in brewing, so I hope I'm not speaking out of turn when I say this. But yeah, hops, the alpha acids get converted to bitterness via heat. So if you're adding hops when there's, you know, when it's not a high enough temperature in the boil or your mash or wherever, you shouldn't necessarily be imparting bitterness on your beer, and that's what's happened here. Twin Sails, the brewers have waited to a point where they believe they're not imparting any bitterness to the beer. I'm sure if you did a scientific test, you'd come up with some number or some lack of number, who knows. But to my palate, 0 IBU makes sense.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's basically you're just getting the hop flavors and aromas off these hops. And a few breweries down the States have done them. And it's, you know, it's like I say, if you lived in London in 1852 and someone handed you a Hefeweizen, you'd yell at them and call them mean names and say that wasn't beer. We're in Vancouver in 2016 and someone hands you that beer and you're a big West Coast IPA guy, you might, you know, yell at them and call them mean names. That's just how the world works.
Mike might even say that it has less bitterness than Keith's.
It's apparently it's a good IPA.
Oh, it is really tasty. It really is. Oh my! All right. Well, I think we're basically.
I think we're done.
I think we're. Mike's done. I think we're done too, though. So I'll sign off for this time. Cheers.